Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have with me the POCO C65. Let's start with its full review. This is a low-end device that really is one of the most attractive you're going to find today. In Mexico, it launched at $2,599 in the 6GB RAM edition with 128GB of storage. That's approximately $150, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. There is also an 8GB RAM edition with 256GB of storage that will definitely, from my point of view, be the most recommended option for you to buy at a price point of 2,899 pesos. That is approximately $165 to give you an idea, but I insist that the prices here are not the same as over there. Even during this initial sale, they have applied a discount of 400 Mexican pesos, which is about $23. So it is even cheaper. Their official distributors are mi.com, which is the official Xiaomi online store, and also Mercado Libre, in addition, obviously, to the official physical Xiaomi stores. So they don't have such a widespread distribution. But that's why they also managed to adjust the price as much as possible. If this device would arrive with Telcel, which is the biggest phone company in Mexico, it would surely cost twice as much easily. There really are few decent competitors against this device. That's why I'm telling you it's one of the most recommended things to buy in this price range. But what do you think if you join me to know it point by point to see what it can offer us? In design, it does not disappoint at all, as we have an excellent use of the front, although it still retains a design with drop notch, but honestly it is nothing that comes to bother. In fact, the bezels are considerably thin and you're even going to find a good resistance in the glass, as it integrates Gorilla Glass 3. It is not something very advanced, but in this price range, no manufacturer integrates Gorilla Glass even in its most basic version. So, it is appreciated that POCO has integrated this level of protection. On the right side, we have the on-off button, which at the same time is the fingerprint reader along with the volume buttons. At the top will be present the headphone jack, while on the left side will be the tray where you can place 2 nano SIM cards and a micro SD card. At the bottom, we have microphone, USB port, and speaker. It is a device that has a thickness of 8.09 millimeters, so we could consider it to be slim, and it has a weight of 192 grams. So I don't think it's one of the lightest in the industry, but at this price point, honestly, the design is very good. In fact, on the back cover, you'll notice that it has a plastic finish, but that comes in very well because it doesn't reflect completely and it doesn't even mark the fingerprints too much. Only in the area of the camera module you will find that it has a much more reflective plastic, but the truth is that the design pleases me. Like all devices of this brand, the only thing I do not like is that they have the brand in this part so large, especially because the brand has a meaning in Spanish that is not so nice. But remember that it means powerful cool. In addition to this black edition, it is also available in blue and purple. So there are 3 options to choose from, although obviously it's not that easy to get each of them. Obviously, being a low-cost device, it doesn't integrate any certification against water and dust or anything like that, but none of its competitors will do. The screen is 6.74 inches, so it is quite large with very good space to watch videos in good dimensions, although it has a resolution that we could consider low. It's 1600 by 720 pixels, so it's HD+, giving a pixel density of 260 pixels per inch. So, we don't have as high definition in text and we don't have as sharp content. But honestly, that in this price range, it is not that common to see screens with higher resolution. Although it is likely that some other device has its strong point in the screen, but not this one. In fact, it is an LCD screen that has very simple colors, not something spectacular. It also does not have good viewing angles, since if you view the content from the side, it will lose much more brightness. It has a maximum peak of 450 nits indoors and 600 nits outdoors. So, it is not such a bright screen, although for personal use I think it is enough, and also the minimum brightness is very comfortable. But something that comes to highlight this screen is its refresh rate that reaches 90 Hz. That means that the screen will refresh its content 90 times in a single second. That's why it is able to display considerably smooth animations. To give you an idea, it has a higher refresh rate than the iPhone 15 screen. So, specifically, the refresh rate point is a point that is very good on this display. Although obviously the rest of the screen specs I already told you are much simpler. Of course, it does have dark mode and also a read mode that you can enable manually or automatically. And it even has a paper texture selector to give you a more natural view. It's also going to offer us 3 different screen calibrations in case you want a more vivid, saturated or standard tone. And manually you could also try to adjust the screen temperature, so I like that through software it offers so many options to try to optimize the experience. Personally, I would stick with the saturated preset. This device only includes a speaker on the bottom, so it's not going to offer us too high a sound experience. It has a good volume, but like almost all of its competitors, it has a simple sound where the mid-frequencies stand out more, but it doesn't get saturated, so it sounds good. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it's not the same to listen to it live. I definitely think that in this price range there are devices that do have a slightly more powerful sound. However, in this case, its strong point is that it does allow us to access a 10-band graphic equalizer with which we can better customize our experience. So in this case, I have the EQ set this way and I have felt that it sounds much higher quality, although the volume is a little bit affected because it is reduced a little bit more. But the truth is that I do like the sound quality that it emits once you adjust the equalization. So, it is not a device that gives priority to power, but to quality. Another positive point about the audio is that it does have a headphone jack, and if you want to use wireless headphones, you don't have a very advanced codec, but it's expected in the range. So it only integrates SBC and ASI. It only integrates one microphone, so this could be a weak point, although most competing devices also only integrate one microphone. But there are some that give more priority to audio pickup. Below, you are going to listen to an audio captured with this microphone.
Esta es una prueba de sonido utilizando el micrófono del POCO C65, que es un dispositivo de gama baja. Y únicamente hay que tener cuidado.
It's definitely a simple microphone that you have to be careful not to cover up so that the audio is still picked up. Now let's listen to a concert simulation. Based on the test I have done with other devices, I can tell you that this microphone picks up audio well at high intensities and does not become saturated. The front camera is 8 megapixels with f2 0-point aperture and fixed focus. Although this device does have a quick open camera mode, it is actually turned off by default. You have to go to the additional settings section and then to the gesture shortcuts section. In this section, you can select that you want to open the camera quickly by double tapping the power button, and even if you are in any other application, the gesture will work. It is a very convenient gesture that I would like to have turned on by default. The capture speed will be considerably good, and if we hold down the shutter, we start recording a short 15-second video. If we slide the shutter, we will notice that it is not possible to shoot a burst on the front camera. And finally, notice how the capture showing the palm is disabled. But you can turn it on perfectly well, and it does work for a much more comfortable capture when the shutter is a bit far away. In the bottom right corner, we also have the beauty mode with a single slider, unlike other devices that have multiple settings. And we can also enable some color filters that we can't preview in real time. The quality of the selfies seems to me considerably high, taking into account the price of this device. Despite finding fixed focus, we really see a good level of detail according to its price and also considerably good colors. In backlit scenarios, the preview does not look optimized, but if you have HDR enabled, you are going to have a considerably good picture. Obviously, it doesn't have total color accuracy, but being such an inexpensive device, we conclude that its camera is of good quality. You can even take portrait pictures, although if you are close to some objects, it will blur them, so it is not so recommendable in that kind of scenarios. But keeping only the face or body, it will perform well. Indoors, there will be a little bit more noise present in the picture, and it also won't have as much detail. So in this scenario is where it's most noticeable that it's not such an expensive device. And at night, if you are near a light source, the result will still be positive, but as you go to areas with indirect lighting, it will reduce the level of detail. Although note that also at night you can get portraits with a quality good enough to post on your Instagram. Obviously, in the most difficult areas, this device may suffer a little, but you can turn on the screen to illuminate your face, although it does not get to have a good balance of light and shadow, but at least your face is illuminated. On the back, we have the 28mm main camera, so it's a little less wide than most average smartphone cameras. It offers us a 50-megapixel sensor with an f1.8 aperture, which is what we generally see in devices this year, but in this price range, we generally see much simpler cameras. So it comes very nicely with the addition of a high-resolution sensor. Also, remember that it has autofocus and it's a simple 5-piece lens. The companion camera is simply a 2-megapixel macro camera with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. So it's not a very recommendable camera, and it also has a completely useless third camera that is simply for a bit of decoration to show that it has 3 cameras, but you consider that it only has 1 camera. Next, I will try to capture number 1 to test the shutter speed this camera has. I will make a second attempt to be absolutely sure that this test was totally satisfactory, and that's it. I was actually surprised at how fast it is able to capture the exact moment. Even if we slide to the left of the shutter, notice how we can shoot a burst of up to 20 pictures. So it will be really very comfortable to capture the exact moment in some scene with good lighting. In the bottom right corner again we have the color filters, but beauty mode is no longer available. It doesn't have a professional mode, so the only manual parameters we can control are focus and exposure with this slider. It also doesn't have a document scanner, nor can you scan QR codes from the main interface. But you can access Google Lens, and from this application you can perform this type of actions. Although the camera has a 50-megapixel mode, I have to tell you that it doesn't seem to take advantage of all the information it's supposed to collect. So it looks like a photograph that is not as high resolution as its specs say it is. In automatic mode, the pictures will be a little over 12 megapixels, so they give us a level of detail in line with most devices in this price range. And we have a good color representation. The truth is that for day-to-day photography, it looks very good. Indoors, it manages to maintain good color saturation, although not as much detail as we would like, because it tries to eliminate noise as much as possible. So it has a good noise treatment, but it does hide certain textures. In backlit conditions, the preview does not look optimized. And note that by default it comes with HDR turned off, so the result would be very bad with those conditions, but you can turn HDR on and it really significantly improves the light capture and balance. So really the result is very natural as long as you have HDR enabled. In the evenings, it doesn't really capture the colors in a very intense way in auto mode, so they're simple pictures, although fortunately they don't have as much noise present. If you use the night mode, it will definitely improve by capturing details and colors better without increasing noise. Even in darker areas in auto mode, it manages to hold its own with good quality considering its price, and if you use the night mode in these conditions, the color rendition will be much more pleasing, although it's definitely not high-end photography, but the device doesn't come with such a high price tag either. And although it doesn't have any optical zoom lens, I find that the digital zoom it integrates is considerably good, allowing you to go up to 10x, which for the price range looks well optimized. So you don't see a picture simply stretched. Definitely that the quality of this device in terms of zoom is good. Capturing moving objects or people in motion is good if you are in good lighting conditions, as you don't notice any blurry areas. And for macro photography, it also has good quality, especially if you use the main camera. Note how you can use the 2x digital zoom, and the quality of the picture is really very good to perceive a lot of detail. On the other hand, the macro camera does not have as good color pickup and has about the same level of detail that we can get by zooming in with the main camera. Therefore, I consider that this camera is not very useful. And it does take good portraits, keeping the objects in the foreground in focus. And that's a very good thing, as other devices in this price range also manage to blur these areas. Also, it doesn't feel like it has cloudy edges, so portraits do come out with good quality. Although night portraits definitely don't have as much quality, as they need a bit longer exposure, so they are likely to come out blurry. Also, in much more complex areas, you'll notice that it's not able to keep the foreground in focus properly. So, it's not quite as accurate, but it could give you some good quality portraits. Video recording is simple but functional. 1080p, that is full HD at 30 frames per second, both with the front camera and the rear camera, something we might expect. Although I must tell you that in this price range, there are devices that dare to offer us to offer lower resolutions, so I think it does meet good quality in video recording. When recording, notice how we have a fairly comfortable slider for zoom, although it does not have some quick presets. But we can pause and resume our recording, as well as launch screenshots. What we can do is turn the flashlight on or off without the need to cut our video, as well as rotate the front camera. Video recording will be simple. You may notice that the white balance and exposure can be varied in a way that is not so pleasant, confirming that video recording is really going to be basic. In an indoor scenario, fortunately it doesn't have as much noise and keeps the color saturation good. So I really think it's a very good result considering the price point, although obviously it still has some aggressive changes in exposure and white balance. But notice how the focus is considerably good considering the price of this device. Generally, at this price point, there are devices that get to have very inaccurate focus. But this one I think shifts well even with subtle movements or quick movements. So, the focus seems to me a good point considering what other manufacturers do, although obviously it is not free of moments when it does not recognize objects very well. In backlit scenes, it will give full priority to illuminating the face, so, unlike photography, it cannot have a perfect balance of light and shadow. But it was what we would expect from a device of this price. When it stops detecting the face is when it gets to balance in a good way the illuminated areas, but it will be advisable to record with the light from the front. At night, the result will be similar to what we have already seen in the rest of the conditions. That is to say, the exposure is felt to be varying a bit aggressively. It will not be able to balance well areas of light and shadow, and of course in the darkest areas it will not be able to recover as much illumination either. But the truth is that we could not get so demanding as the device is inexpensive. So it's pretty much what we would expect. If you want more quality in video recording, you will obviously need to invest a little more. The device does not integrate either optical or digital stabilization. So when you're walking, it's going to feel a bit annoying, and obviously when you're running, it's going to be a total mess. But again, I think that's what you would expect from inexpensive devices like this. When zooming, we will notice something positive since it can zoom in and out smoothly, although obviously at maximum zoom it will feel a bit exaggerated. In this case it can reach up to 6x digital zoom, but I think that within its price range is well defended. The device doesn't have slow motion, but it does have fast motion that can go from 4 to 1800x. 4x can be good for recording movements of people, but it doesn't have stability, so it can get a little bit bad in the result. But in its fastest mode, it can definitely give you a spectacular result, capturing landscape movements. The front camera shows good color and a good level of detail, although we see that it does not have stabilization, and that is probably a considerably weak point. Plus, it doesn't perform very well in backlight, and obviously it has fixed focus. So it is a camera that in general we could say that it is simple, but if you have a good lighting condition, it can possibly give you a good result as long as there is no movement in the scene. Indoors there is a lot more noise present, plus the colors can become a little bit paler in certain conditions. So, it confirms that it is not such an advanced camera, and on the other hand, at night we will have more noise in the darkest areas. But I insist that if you have a light source considerably close, I think the result can still be positive. And just like in the rear camera, in the front camera we don't have slow motion, but we do have fast motion, although again without stabilization. This cell phone comes with Android 13 and on it runs the MIUI 14 layer, which is the system used by Xiaomi in several devices. In this case, it is a special version for POCO and also comes with much more simplified settings. So, we do not have so many added features, although we do have a totally different aesthetic than what we find on other devices, so you immediately notice that it is a POCO device. The launcher is completely different, so when you open the apps, notice that it immediately opens a browser. That can get to be a bit annoying, although in the settings you can remove it, but this will be one of its main features as the launcher is divided into different categories of applications. Honestly, I do not find it the most attractive, but it is a point that is very different from most devices today. And it is very curious because it offers us an application called App Vault, which seems to be another launcher with quick information, news and other things. But honestly, the system feels very redundant in many cases. With repeated applications or functions, the truth is a system that doesn't offer us too many functions and it doesn't have such a neat design either. The haptic experience will also be simple, since the vibration motor is on the Z-axis and the system is not optimized to take advantage of it. In addition, it is a system with a bit of bloatware, i.e., you will find added applications that you did not install, and I consider that many of them are not useful. Fortunately, you can uninstall them, but it can be annoying to have to uninstall so many applications that the system added. Also, it is a system that is going to show you ads in several sections, including your file manager or security application, although curiously, at this moment that I am trying to show you these ads, they have not appeared. So maybe they're not that constant, but they do pop up ads so that the manufacturer can make a little more revenue, since the device is extremely inexpensive. But it is definitely not so nice to encounter ads inside the system applications. For example, when I opened the web browser, it showed me an ad, and I insist that this is definitely not something nice. For security, it integrates a side fingerprint reader that supports up to 5 different registrations. Note how it also drops ads through notifications. So, I insist that the experience is not good at all in this regard. But let's return to the issue of security, since the fingerprint reader seems to me to work properly, and in addition to the fingerprint reader, it also has facial recognition. But obviously, it will be a 2-dimensional facial recognition, so it is not very secure. But for convenience, you could try to add it. Just do it at your own risk, because they could definitely get to unlock it with someone similar to you or even a photograph in the worst case. Interestingly, you can add another face, and you can also use Smart Unlock with Bluetooth devices so that while it is connected to your headphones or a wireless speaker, it's not constantly asking you to unlock it. It includes Google's password manager, so it will automatically fill in all the information. But in this case, it does come with the security filter enabled to first verify through your fingerprint that it is you who is filling in these fields, which comes in handy. In the security application, you will also find the application lock option, which is always very useful for when you lend your phone to a friend and the phone is unlocked. This way you can filter which applications have to request again your fingerprint or a pattern that may be different from your lock screen. It also has a secure folder within your file manager, although it is called private files. In this section, you can protect any type of document that you do not want to be visible with a different pattern from your lock screen. However, it does not integrate a child mode that would make it much easier to lend this cell phone to a little one and have it in a safe environment. An antivirus scanner is integrated, but it is Xiaomi's own, unlike other manufacturers that have partnerships with much more recognized antivirus companies such as Avast and the like. And note how again in this application is showing us another ad. Finally, does bring the security and emergency SOS functions that have virtually all mobile devices, so that by pressing the power button 5 times you can launch some specific action, such as sending your information to security contacts or recording video or something similar. The battery is 5000 milliamps, so the capacity is very similar to what we see in virtually all devices today. Although in my testing it performed less than one would expect in batteries of this capacity relative to other tests I've done. So with continuous heavy use it would give us about 4 hours and 20 minutes, so it's not that extended of a time. The advantage is that it does have a normal saver mode that could help you on a day-to-day basis to extend that runtime. And it also has an ultra save mode that could help you in emergency scenarios when you have very little power left. Fortunately, the device allows us to add some applications that we consider essential to maintain our communication. The charger included in the box is 10 watts, although the device supports 18 watts charging through the power delivery standard. So yes, you could get to use other chargers to charge it faster, but in the test I used the original charger and in 15 minutes it recovered 12%. Then in 30 minutes it recovered 22%. And the full charge it finished in 2 hours and 32 minutes. So it's not a fast charge. And if you were thinking of leaving it charging overnight, notice that it doesn't have an optimized charging mode or smart charging that other devices integrate. No charging lock or anything like that. So you have to be careful so that the battery doesn't degrade so quickly. This is not yet a device with 5G connectivity. We will have good connectivity either way, but not the most modern. But anyway, any device at this price point will be 4G. One good thing is that through its security application, we can manage which applications can use our mobile data plan and which applications will only be allowed to connect to the internet using Wi-Fi. This can help you a lot to have control of your data plan consumption. It has Wi-Fi 5 connectivity, so it is not the fastest you will find today. In fact, in the tests I have done, it is one of the devices that can connect a little slower. Although obviously everything will depend on your internet connection, but it is definitely not such a strong point. Although consider that all devices in this price range will have this same level of connectivity. Where it can stand out is in Bluetooth connectivity, as it has the 5.3 version giving you good stability with accessories. And you can also get to stand out by integrating NFC, which is a very uncommon chip in devices of this price. So you can use Google Pay to make mobile payments using the back of your cell phone or connect to other devices by simply bringing them close together. So the experience can really become very advanced, as this chip is usually found in much more expensive devices. It also integrates FM radio, although obviously you need to have your headphones connected to work as an antenna. In addition, it is capable of projecting its screen wirelessly, both to Chromecast and to other special screens. It also integrates Android Auto to connect it to your vehicle, both wireless and wired. And by the way, it has the USB 2.0 port. One thing I like is that it sacrifices virtually no sensors, unlike the vast majority of devices at this price point, because it does integrate accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, orientation sensor, light sensor, and even a proximity sensor, which according to the specs is a virtual sensor, but note how it works considerably well. It also has gravity sensor, linear acceleration sensor, and rotation vector sensor. So really, it has everything we could ask for. And in this aspect, it really stands out from many of its competitors. Xiaomi's ecosystem is exaggeratedly large with respect to the devices it has, since in addition to the Xiaomi brand, they have the Redmi brand and the POCO brand. The three brands have a myriad of devices, among headphones, bracelets, watches, tablets. So the truth is there is not much we can say against this manufacturer in this aspect. However, despite having a lot of devices in their family, they don't really seem to have such a good interaction between them. From my point of view, they should be very easily added to this cell phone. But the Xiaomi Home app doesn't even come installed. You have to install it separately. So the ecosystem is very broad in number of devices, but it still doesn't achieve interaction at the level of what we would like to see. It also has technologies like Google Fast Pair or Nearby Share, in addition to Xiaomi Share, to interact with other devices since it has Android. But in some ways, globally, it does feel a bit dependent on Google. Since, despite having Xiaomi Cloud, in reality in many things they are going to use the Google Cloud. So they offer us 15 gigabytes for cloud storage through Google Drive or Google Photos, and the control of the home devices will be centered on Google Home and not on Xiaomi Home. So it seems to me that Xiaomi can still improve the brand strength, integrating in a better way all its ecosystem. Let's go for the performance test with fast camera to be able to notice the openness of the apps. This device is powered by the MediaTek Helio G85 processor, a processor that is considerably good. In fact, for this price range, it is possibly the best processor. And it comes in two versions, 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. It took 4.1 seconds, give or take on average, to open each application. So I guess we don't have an ultra-fast or ultra-smooth experience, but it's about the same as we would expect on other devices in this price range. Possibly it also has to do with the optimization that can be achieved with the operating system, since we also noticed that it cannot take good advantage of the good amount of RAM it has. So, the device comes with good specs, but the actual performance may be a little lower than we would like. Although, either way, I believe that within the competing devices, this will be one of the best performers, because consider that we opened 16 apps. So, we're going to close some applications to see if we can get to help you a little bit in all this interaction of multiple applications simultaneously. But consider that I'm testing the version with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and they're supposed to add 4 virtual gigabytes, so we would have in total 12 gigabytes of RAM. And we're definitely not looking at a 12 gigabyte RAM experience. It looks like a 3 gigabyte RAM experience. So, it's not well utilized, although that could be corrected through an update, but I sincerely doubt very much that it's ever going to happen. So, the performance is decent within the price range, but I think it's not as spectacular as the specs would lead us to believe. One explanation as to why this device might not go as fast as we would expect is that the storage can get pretty slow. So, it's a storage that does give you a very extended capacity, as it can be 256 gigabytes in this version, but it doesn't have as much read and write speed. and that may cause it to not feel as snappy as other devices that may have the same processor, but with faster storage. So I don't consider it to be a super fast device, but it does have too much space. The truth is that having 256 gigabytes of storage in this price range is definitely a beauty. Plus, you can put a microSD card up to 1 terabyte, extending the capacity even further. So it's definitely not a device you're going to fill up easily. For gaming, you won't find a special suite with more options. There is only an application called Game Center, but it will offer us the installation of new games. And although in the tools we can get to speed up some content, it does not really have more action on the games. Also notice how again ads appear in this section. In Call of Duty, this device by default loads low graphics quality at a medium frame rate. What we can do is go up to medium graphics quality and also at a high frame rate. However, this processor doesn't support too many graphical effects, so don't expect a very high experience. The experience will obviously be very good, and despite not having a very high graphic quality, it should be noted that in this case, some elements that in other devices in this price range do not appear are shown, such as, for example, some weapon elements that in other devices appear simply as boxes. Then, the truth is that the experience can be good. I think that in this price range, there is not going to be a device that gives you a superior gaming performance in recent devices. On Legends, we changed the auto setting to a setting that was appropriate for the price range of this device, so we set it to low quality at 60 frames per second to see what it was capable of. And in this case, the experience wasn't entirely good, as it did have some hiccups and constant jitter, but the truth is that it is appreciated that it can get up to 30 frames per second in this price range. Obviously, I think it would be more appropriate to adjust it up to 30 frames per second to have a more stable experience without so many fluctuations. But in this case, we wanted to do a little extreme test, and the truth is that what I liked is that it doesn't get so hot. In the SpongeBob game, by default, we have resolution and average quality at 30 frames per second. But for a fair test, we set it to low quality and low resolution to see what it was capable of. Again, we noticed constant fluctuations, but the good thing is that the low peaks didn't go below 30 frames per second most of the time. Although there were a few moments where it did get seriously low, but it wasn't constant. The truth is that for this price, it will give us a good gameplay as long as you select a graphic quality according to the processor it has. And finally, we run Genshin Impact, which by default gives us very low graphic quality. And in this case, we left it at that setting because it's one of the cheapest devices we've tested, and we turned it up to 60 frames per second just to see what it was capable of. Obviously, the simple fact of being able to run this content on a device of this price is already a positive thing. Obviously, it's not going to give us an ultra-smooth experience, but it was considerably stable. So simply running at over 30 frames per second on several occasions is already a positive thing. And the truth is, it doesn't go below 30 frames per second consistently. So the experience in various games will undoubtedly be very good, unlike other devices of this price that could give us a much simpler experience. For the moment, this has been all regarding this device. I hope you liked this video review. If you liked it, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.